Do you use the wine app Vivino? I have an account, but I rarely use it. However, more than 73 million people around the globe use Vivino, and over the years they've added close to 330 million ratings. The numbers are impressive, but how useful are those scores really? Vivino ratings are crowdsourced, and they are therefore based on the opinions of mainly amateurs. The main critics on the other side are usually professionals with a background in wine, like myself, and their scores are based on one person's taste. So is one expert's opinion more valuable than many laymen's? That is one question that I would like to dive into today. We are therefore going to compare my scores on some highly rated Vivino wines with the Vivino scores to see whether we can make any decent purchasing decisions based on Vivino scores. So let's go. First and foremost, Vivino is using a 5-star system in order to rate their wines, and they're saying themselves that a 4-star score equals a 90-point score on robertparker.com or a 91-point score on Venice. So I'm starting off with the 2024 Batasiolo Moscato Dusty from Italy, and it received a 4.2 star score. But let's have a look what the good people on Vivino are saying about this wine. Let me take a little snap here. So the first rating I see is by Milan, and he or she writes 4.1 stars, lightly sweet, slightly effervescent, grapes forward. I don't really think this is giving me enough information to make a purchasing decision, but we know from the score that Milan thinks that this wine is like a 90 plus kind of wine. Let's see whether that is actually the case. So Moscato Dusty is definitely a wine style that I enjoy quite a bit, even though I don't drink it super often. But it's quite unique in its kind of style. It has 5.5% alcohol usually, so it's very low in alcohol. It's really fruity and juicy and lively. And most Moscato Dusties are really cheap and they are usually quite consistently delicious. So let's see whether this one is one of them. So you might already be able to see some bubbles rising to the top of the surface of this wine. Moscato Dusty is slightly sparkling, fizzy, and the CO2 just adds quite a lot of liveliness to this wine, which usually also contains quite a lot of sugar. This is really pure and grapey and lively, so it definitely has quite a lot of grape flavor. Muscat à petit grain is a grape variety that tends to have this kind of really grapey flavor. There's also some exotic fruit flavor here, pineapple, a little bit of apricots. So it's really fruit driven, but quite nice. On the palate, it's super juicy, lively, really fresh, and yeah, quite a delicious wine. I mean, this is not a serious wine. It's not a wine that is outstanding in any way, but it's a wine that is just a lot of fun. So I do like Moscato Dusty. But the question remains, does this deserve a 4.1 or 4.2 score, which would equal to 91 or 92 points? And my answer is no. I think this is a very good wine, but it kind of tastes like most Moscato Dusties would. It doesn't have anything really outstanding, extraordinary. So I would rate this 86 points. So that would be 3.5, 3.4 on Vivino's score. So not even close. But I can see how someone might say, this is absolutely delicious. It's much better than this kind of harsh and difficult Bordeaux that I tasted recently. So I'm going to give this a high rating. But yeah, I just personally think that I've tasted many wines that taste like that. This is not outstanding. It's nothing really unique or special, but it's a really well-made wine. Let me clear my palate. Wash away all the sugar before I continue. Next up, I have the 2024 Taupuhi Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. The wine has a 4.3 average score on Vivino, but Monty thinks it's a 4.4. Gooseberry Green Apple Classic SB Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, 10 to 15 euros. Good price quality ratio. Okay, yeah, I mean, I can understand a little bit more what this wine is going to taste like based on that tasting note. And on top of that, Vivino also tells me that the wine is a good match for me. So let's see whether that's actually true. Whoa, that was pretty good. So Taupuhi is apparently a Maori word for darling. And I mean, all of those New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs have kind of Maori names that mean something random. I mean, it's great that Maori culture is kind of spread through the medium of the wine label around the world, but people could be a little bit more creative, in my opinion. So this does smell of gooseberry. It smells of green pepper as well. There's a little bit of grassiness, but also a little bit of dustiness to this wine. So it's a little herbaceous, spicy. By the way, there's apparently a spicy Sauvignon Blanc trend going viral on the internet. I've never tasted spicy Sauvignon Blanc, but if you have, let me know down below whether I should try it out. Maybe I will. All right, on the palate, this is kind of grippy, a little bit too acidic, a little too demanding in my opinion. It lacks a little bit of body and roundness, but it's pretty well made. But in the end, this is a very typical Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. Nothing bad, but also nothing really well made. So I wouldn't rate this 92 points. That would be ridiculous. I mean, 92 points for Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, that's kind of the very upper echelon of Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. So I would rate this, again, 86 points. I think it's really well made, solid, but nothing to rave about. So yeah, 86 points, which would be, I don't know, 3.4 on Vivino or 3.4 stars on Vivino. The next wine is the 2023 Old Soul Loai Chardonnay. So a Chardonnay from the area of Lodi in California. And this is 95% Chardonnay, but there's also some Sauvignon Blanc in here, which is not uncommon when it comes to commercial Chardonnays from the US. Some producers add aromatic grape varieties like, for example, Gewürztraminer or Sauvignon Blanc in order to pimp up their wine. So let's see whether I can do the spin thing again with this one. Spin it like Beckham. Oh, that was nothing. No. I gotta say that photo recognition software is pretty good. So this one was rated 3.9 stars on Vivino. It's again a good match for me. Apparently the app knows exactly what I like. And what did people say about it? Debbie really liked this. She rated it 4.1 and wrote, still quite nice. Smooth cherry taste, smoke scent, 14.5% served with Hoppin' John soup on a snowy day. Hold on, that's weird. Debbie actually rated the Pinot Noir here, not the Chardonnay, even though this is actually in the page for the Chardonnay. I know, the photo is a photo of the Chardonnay, but the page is actually the page of the Pinot Noir. So Vivino messed up here. Let me try again. Okay, now I'm on the Chardonnay page and the rating is actually 4.2. So should be a pretty good wine again. The rating of Misty Pope rated a wine. 4.3, and it's a pretty long one. Apparently my new house Chardonnay for summer 2025. Bottle opened a couple of days ago, and this is the final glass. Still yummy. Toasted oak aroma, but not overpowering, with a creamy quality and enough acidity to balance, but not overwhelm. Maybe I will rate each of these for the rest of the year. Seems a bit different each time. Today not paired with food, but the funk music works with it. That's such a great rating. I mean, giving me so much information here. I mean, the rating is great, but also the text, the tasting note is quite useful. Even though, well, I don't necessarily know what the wine tastes like now, but it kind of paints a beautiful picture. All right, so this is kind of golden in color, pretty typical for a Chardonnay. This was also aged in oak, so oak-aged Chardonnays tend to have that slightly golden tinge. On the nose, this is very oaky, so there's not all that much fruit flavor there. It's kind of disappearing a little bit in the background. I can smell a little bit of ripe apple, but there's also chocolate, smoked notes, a little bit of cinnamon, quite a lot of oak. On the palate, this is quite rich, concentrated. Again, quite a lot of oak there. The alcohol is 14.5, so you can definitely feel it. And I'm sorry, but this is definitely not a great wine. So the wine clearly lacks depth and complexity. I also think it can fall flat on the palate. It just lacks acidity. And I couldn't see myself drink like half a bottle of this. It would just be too much. So I'm going to rate this 79 points. I think this is kind of an average commercial Chardonnay, but it's not like a 92 point outstanding Chardonnay. I mean, in this category, if you would kind of convert that rating from Vivino, you'd find some of the best Chardonnays in the world. Some of the top producers from California, but also from Burgundy or from many other places in the world. So this is just, I think this is just not worth it. So let's move on to the next wine, which is the 2024 Chateau Pukari Viorica Muscat Ottonel from the Republic of Moldova. That was quite a feat, like pronouncing that whole name. Thank you. So this should be interesting, tasting a wine from the Republic of Moldova. And I think that's something that Vivino does quite well. I mean, you get to discover interesting wines on that platform. So let's see whether this is any good. The wine is actually a blend of Viorica, which is a native Moldovan grape variety, and Muscat Ottonel, which is like an aromatic grape variety from the Muscat family. So the rating is for the 2023 vintage, but anyways, it's 4.2 stars, and Vivino says again that this wine is a good match for me. Someone whose name I cannot read gave it 4.3 stars, and the tasting note reads white blossom and elderflower on the nose with a balanced, slightly acidic taste and a sweetish aftertaste. Citrus on the tongue, medium-bodied, pairs well with food. With what kind of food? We don't know. Anyways, I think the tasting note was pretty good because it kind of described an aromatic white wine with a little bit of residual sugar. And this is maybe the style. Let's find out. This is definitely quite aromatic, lots of fruit flavor. So again, a grapey dimension to it. There's some citrus fruit flavor as well. And I also get some tropical notes, some passion fruit, some mango kind of character. So this is quite aromatic and really fruit driven. On the palate, this is quite crisp, fresh. It doesn't have much residual sugar, maybe a few grams, but it certainly isn't sweet. So it's quite a lively, fresh, fruit driven white wine. I actually think it's pretty good. So there is no sweetish aftertaste, and I would say, 4.2 stars is definitely too high again here. I mean, this is a good wine. It's a decent wine, quite fruity, quite lively, quite well made. I think it lacks a little bit of balance on the palate. It could have a little bit more freshness, a little bit more grip there. But yeah, I think this is decent. I'm going to rate it 85 points, which is far off this 92 point or 4.2 stars score that you can get from Vivino. I think so far the ratings are not very consistent, and I think they tend to be quite high. It kind of seems like everything gets at least 4 stars on Vivino, which kind of defeats the purpose. It would be nice if wines would be rated on a scale that actually goes from one number to the other and people actually use all of the numbers rather than just kind of sticking to like the 4.0 stars, or even on the 100-point scale, the 90 points. The next wine is the 2024 Fragancia de Marta Ecologic from Penedes in Spain. So this is an organic wine that is also vegan, and it's in this beautiful bottle that is not protecting the wine from sunlight. So I still don't understand why rosé producers are not more careful when it comes to clear glass bottles. Anyways, according to my notes, this is a bit of a weird blend. It's a blend of Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir, and Xarello, 2 white grape varieties, and a red grape variety. That's not normally how you make rosé. So as this is a bit of a weird label, let's see how Vivino deals with that, whether it's actually able to identify it. No. So I actually had to search for the wine, but that worked decently well. The wine received a 4.2 star score on Vivino, and guess what? This is a good match for me. Again, so Ulysse rated a wine, said 4.0 stars, Xarello, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir, a bio-organic Penedes Rosado in Languedoc style. Very light and highly enjoyable during hot days of Mediterranean summer. Okay. Yeah, not too bad. However, 4.2 stars on Vivino would translate to 92 and 93 points. Just pretty high for a rosé. It has a light color. It's, yeah, slightly pink, a little bit of onion skin kind of color. On the nose, it's a little bit milky. I mean, there's some yogurt kind of flavor there. You also get strawberries. So strawberries and cream would be a good descriptor. On the palate, this is kind of a little harsh. The acidity is quite high. There's not a lot of body there. I mean, how much alcohol does it have? Yeah, it's at 12% of alcohol, which is nice. I mean, drinking a low alcohol rosé wine on the terrace in summer is not a bad idea. But yeah, overall, it just doesn't feel very harmonious. It feels a little harsh, a little acidic, but it does have some interesting aromatics. So the blend is quite interesting as well. So not a terrible wine, that's for sure. So for me personally, this would be an 86-point score. Definitely not 92. I mean, it just lacks the intensity, complexity, the flavor that I would look for if I'd give a wine that many points. But I mean, it is interesting, it is good. You can taste some of the Sauvignon character, which is quite nice. It's just a complex, really interesting style of rosé wine. All right, we're moving on to the next wine, which is the 2021 Warwick 3 Cape Ladies Cape Blend from Stellenbosch, and it's a blend of Pinotage, Merlot, and Cabernet Sauvignon. Apparently, the 3 Cape Ladies was the first Cape blend ever bottled, and according to my notes, it was also James Bond's seductive wine of choice in the 007 book Carte Blanche, published in 2011. But what is much more important is, what does the crowd at Vivino say about this wine? So let's scan that label. Okay, so this wine received a 4.0 score on Vivino, and it's a good match for me. Obviously, all of the wines are. And so let's read the first review that comes up, and it's Jacko Fick rated a wine 4.0, deep ruby, the nose, has mulberry, cherry, dried plum, firm tannins, full-bodied smoky plum, hints of licorice, cherry, long finish. And that's pretty good description of Pinotage in my opinion. So let's see whether I agree after tasting the wine. So it's kind of medium ruby in color. The core is fairly ruby, so it doesn't show a lot of development. On the nose, it smells of cherries, it smells of blackberries. There's also some kind of black currant kind of flavor coming through as well, a little bit of juniper. On the palate, it is a little grippy. It has good acidity, fine tannins. So it's a really well-structured wine in my opinion. There's a little bit of vanilla coming through, so you can smell the oak or taste the oak as well. But it's pretty well balanced overall. I would say this is actually one of the best wines of the tasting so far. So 4.0 stars on Vivino translates to 90 points. And I think finally we are kind of in agreement about this wine. I would rate it 89 points. So I wouldn't quite go as far, but we're really close together here. I do think that maybe this wine is closer to my score as opposed to all of the other ones that were scored much higher than what I would think they deserved, is that this is a little bit more rough and rugged, but really well made. I think this is also a wine that will shine even more if you pair it with some lighter meat dishes. Because of that structure, it will just make the meal taste a little bit more interesting and also will become a little bit more mellow if paired with some protein. So yeah, I think the people on Vivino just don't get this wine maybe. That's that's maybe a controversial statement here, but yeah, I think this deserves 90 points or 89 points at least. So let's move on to the next wine. I'm pretty sure that this style of wine is quite successful on Vivino. It's the Terre di Faiano Primitivo organic wine from Puglia. This is 100% Primitivo, and Primitivo is a grape variety that's also widely planted in the US, in California, under the name Zinfandel. So quite a successful grape variety. I think there's a pretty big difference between Californian Zinfandel and Primitivo from Puglia. Even though it's the same grape variety, the style is very different. And in California, you have a much bigger range in terms of quality. Some of the best Zinfandels are really outstanding. And you don't have that much of a range for Primitivos coming out of Puglia. But let's see, maybe this one is great. You never know. So the people on Vivino do think this wine is great. They gave it an average rating of 4.2. And Vivino again thinks this is a good match for me. What else? However, this is also the cheapest wine I think we've tasted so far. The average price is €8.17 per bottle. But let's see what the crowd said. Oh, there's a really high rating, 4.5 stars by Hafiz. And he writes, really lovely primitive with a lovely pronounced bouquet of vanilla, good finish, excellent for easy drinking or with meals. All right, this doesn't sound great to me. I mean, if the only flavor descriptor you hear is vanilla, then yeah, I know I'm coming across a little bit like a wine snob here, but yeah, I mean, I would definitely want to hear some fruit flavors, and I would want to hear a little bit more about the taste of the wine. But it still kind of suggests a little bit what the style of wine is going to be. I'm thinking this is probably a heavily oaked Primitivo that's quite juicy, and yeah, but let's taste it. So medium dark in color, medium ruby in color. On the nose, there's actually not much vanilla. It smells of ripe cherries. There's a little bit of licorice flavor coming through as well. There are some raspberry notes, some strawberry compote notes. So quite ripe fruit flavors, but quite fruit driven. On the palate, this is really juicy. It has some residual sugar, but it also has greenish tannins. It's a little harsh. Definitely not a great wine. Definitely not a 92-point wine. This, for me, is kind of a... I mean, it is something I think lots of people like because it's just so ripe and rich and sweet. Kind of, I mean, it's not a sweet wine, but it has those sweet flavors and also some residual sugar. But yeah, I'm going to rate this 80 points. I think it's solid, but it's definitely not great. Last but not least, I'm tasting the 2022 McManis Loi Petit Sra. So another Californian wine, another wine from Lodi. This time made with a grape variety that is not that famous, but can produce really outstanding wines. Petit Sra. Not bad. Petit Sra is also called Durif, and it's a grape variety that produces really bold, rich, concentrated red wines with a lot of color. So I gotta be careful here. If I stain my shirt with this wine, it's not going to be white anymore. All right, the wine has an average score of 4.0 stars on Vivino, and it has 2,454 ratings. I guess the more ratings you get, the more kind of consistent, the more reliable the scores are. But let's see whether that's actually the case here. The first review I'll see here is Morteza Azizi. She or he writes 4.0 stars, region California, grape variety Petit Sra Durif, ABV 30.5%, stopper screw cap, really a lot of detail there. Full-bodied red wine, deep inky red with violet reflections in color, on the nose aromas of plum and blueberry with notes of spices. High tannins, well-balanced in acidity, rich and intense red wine in style. On the palate, dry, oaky, deep, fruit-driven, powerful, filled with ripe, jammy hint of leather, touch of dark chocolate, delivers red fruits character, lengthy, structured, meaty, bold. It has a long finish. That's a detailed tasting note. Wow. I think that was really useful. So quite a lot of detail, and I already kind of know what to expect, unless the tasting note wasn't correct, but Morteza is probably spot on. So this is definitely very dark in color. It's definitely not see-through. It's super compact. On the nose, quite delicious. Lots of blackberry, cherry kind of flavor, quite pure, and there's a little bit of spice, but it's quite fruit-driven and pretty beautiful. On the palate, this is powerful with lots of flavor, fine tannins, but a lot of tannins. But yeah, quite harmonious, rich, delicious stuff. So I just saw that Vivino actually gave me a tasting note for a previous vintage. This is the 2022 vintage and it's 4.1 stars on Vivino. So I think I'm actually in the same ballpark here. I would rate this 90 points. I think it's really delicious, the best wine in the tasting, and yeah, pretty close to the Vivino rating as well. This was an interesting tasting. I really enjoyed comparing my tasting notes to other people's tasting notes. And I also thought that the app Vivino works really well. It's kind of, the technology is pretty cool. And the app gave me quite a lot of information on the wines, the grape varieties. So that was pretty good. However, I didn't really think that the average score, the crowdsourced score on Vivino, was useful for me in order to make purchasing decisions. I thought, yeah, the scores were a little bit all over the place. They were too high in general, but in some cases they were just off by a lot, at least compared to my own palate. So I'm definitely going to stick to listening to other experts' opinion when it comes to finding new interesting wines. But I can understand why people use the app. I mean, it's great for keeping a track of what you've tasted, sharing your impressions with the rest of the world, and maybe also for finding new interesting wines. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please like it down here, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. My question of the day is, do you use Vivino? What do you think about the app? Let me know down below in the comments, but whatever you do, stay thirsty.